And so ends the wild and woolly second 2016 presidential debate. I am John Heilemann, and here at the Washington University Spin Room with my partner Mark Halperin for a special Bloomberg Politics post-game coverage of the history that you just witnessed tonight. We are going to talk about a lot of things tonight, but Mark, just give me your first thoughts about what we just saw.
Well, a lot of the early moments went to the recent allegations on both and revelations on both sides. There you see Donald Trump with his family, and family was front and center tonight. The debate closed with mentions of Donald Trump's children. It started with some pretty tough back and forth between the two. It's interesting, a lot of supporters of Donald Trump and some neutral observers thought Donald Trump had a very strong night, a stronger night than the first debate, and a night filled, they thought, with some very strong moments. Many people believe that Hillary Clinton took advantage of Trump's lack of coherence at some moments, and that she had a much better night, and that Donald Trump did not do anything like what he needed to do to get back in this race. So I'm still digesting it, but I would say I lean towards the latter. I don't think he had nearly a strong enough performance to change the dynamics of the race in which he is behind.
Right. I think I would say my headlines out of this debate were that Donald Trump performed well enough that the potential of a complete meltdown in the Republican Party tomorrow has been staved off. Yep. I think he performed still poorly in many respects, and especially in the first half hour of the debate, where many Republicans were commenting on what they saw as a meltdown in that first 30 minutes, which is obviously a very important part of the debate. Times when he seemed to be menacing, glowering at her. The sniffling continued. There was a moment when he threatened to put on something I've never seen before in a presidential debate. He basically threatened his opponent with jail time. There was not a strong first 30 minutes for her. She then spent a large part of the next hour or so on defense, and I think that part of the debate allowed Trump to salvage something. You know, we talked before about whether he could win this debate or whether the goal was survival. I think he has survived this debate, but I can't imagine anyone will say that he gained any additional votes tonight, and I think he probably lost some.
You saw there briefly Chelsea Clinton greeting Ivanka Trump. The two of them are friends. And
yep.
Again, you saw some of the harshest rhetoric I think I've ever heard from both candidates, probably a little bit more from Mr. Trump, but from both candidates during the debate. A strange situation. The Clintons famously attended Donald Trump's wedding. They had a very positive relationship before this campaign, and you see, although their daughters are still friendly, you see just how much the thing has turned into pretty harsh negativity, and you're seeing now what happens at the end of all these town halls. Very few of the people in the audience actually got to ask questions, only a handful, but almost all of them will get souvenir photos with the Clintons and the Trumps.
So another thing we saw from Donald Trump tonight, which I think is planting some seeds for things later, he criticized the moderators relentlessly throughout the debate for being unfair, for interrupting him too much. He at one point said that it was 3-on-1. Trump has on various times in this campaign sort of suggested there's a conspiracy against him, that it's a rigged system and so on. You could see him literally on the debate stage tonight starting to lay a predicate down for claiming that this debate was in some way tilted against him.
Yeah. Donald Trump throughout the evening spoke a lot in shorthand. He said a lot of things that were on his mind. He certainly came better prepared, without a doubt, than he did in the first debate.
Right.
But our general consensus view here, initial take, is good enough to try to maybe stop the absolute widespread panic within the Republican Party, but probably not good enough in the single performance to change the dynamics of the race, in which, I'll say again, he went into this weekend being behind and has had a hellish 48 hours of news coverage. We're going to be back throughout the next half an hour. Take a break now, but have more coverage on Bloomberg television and on Twitter. We're going to show you the top tweeted moments of the debate, and some guests from both sides to talk about how they think their candidate did. John and I will be back here, and we'll talk about, again, some of the statistics from the night right after this.
back to Bloomberg Politics, coverage of the second presidential debate live on Bloomberg TV and live on Twitter. I'm Ramy Inocencio right here in New York City, where our friends at Twitter have been meticulously tracking the top tweeted moments of the night, and we have them for you right now. Tonight marks the most tweeted debate of all time, passing the first presidential debate earlier this month. And tonight, the moment that got the most tweets came around 10:11 p.m. Eastern, when both of the candidates talked about what they would do about the refugee crisis as well as civil war in Syria. Take a look.
We will be attacking Mosul in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Well, all of these bad leaders from ISIS are leaving Mosul. Why can't they do it quietly? Why can't they do the attack, make it a sneak attack, and after the attack is made, inform the American public that we've knocked out the leaders, we've had a tremendous success. People leave. Why do they have to say we're going to be attacking Mosul within the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is what they're saying? How stupid is our country?
I would not use American ground forces in Syria. I think that would be a very serious mistake. I don't think American troops should be holding territory, which is what they would have to do as an occupying force. I don't think that is a smart strategy. I do think the use of special forces, which we're using, the use of enablers and trainers in Iraq, which has had some positive effects, are very much in our interests.
Now, the runners-up for top tweeted moments of the debate were when Trump said he was, quote, a gentleman, and let Clinton answer a question first. Also, when Trump said Clinton should be in jail. Now, the highest peak of Twitter chatter, which we've been tracking all night, was the Syria clip we just saw, which came more than an hour into the debate. Meanwhile, the top 3 issues that Twitter users discussed over the past 90 minutes were 1, terrorism, 2, foreign affairs, and 3, the economy. We're going to send you back out now to the debate spin room in St. Louis, where our Bloomberg Washington bureau chief Megan Murphy is standing by. Megan, take it away.
Thanks so much for that, Ramy. Well, I'm joined here now in this spin room with 2 of our reporters, Kevin Cirilli and our national reporter, Sahil Kapoor. Kevin, I want to start with you. You cover Trump for us. You were at that extraordinary press availability earlier today at the Four Seasons, where Donald Trump called that impromptu meeting some of Bill Clinton's chief accusers. What surprised you about tonight? Did he telegraph that move? And do you think he did well enough to stave off some of the crazy criticism of him that's coming from all corners?
Megan, this was Donald Trump going nuclear, right? I mean, there's no other way you can describe it. He had his back up against a wall after a sexist, misogynistic tape came out just on Friday, it was, and really set the tone and really risked defining the rest of his candidacy between now and Election Day. We've seen over the past 24 hours a remarkable display in the conservative movement, with Republican after Republican backing away from his candidacy. Yesterday in Trump Tower, when he came down, I mean, the political scenes that we've seen just play out over the past 24 hours, we're going to be talking about for decades. But the bottom line is this. We in the traveling press corps walked in less than 2 hours before the start of a debate, having no clue what we were walking into, and see Clinton's accusers literally sitting next to the candidate himself. His tone was stark, his tone was serious, and his tone was essentially bring it on. And that's what we saw tonight. Now, whether that does enough to win over or win back the Republicans who left him, I don't think it does. And in talking with some of those Republicans as this debate was going on, quite candidly, they're frazzled and they're scared. Talking to sources within Trump world, they feel that this is Hillary Clinton, a rattled Hillary Clinton, and they feel this will give them enough momentum to somehow move forward.
We're going to pick that apart about whether it rattled her, but I wanted to use you, Sahil. This really was, again, the tale of 2 debates. The first 30 minutes, they sort of really smash mouth, really nasty. I think there were many of us in that room watching it that actually did not know whether we'd actually get through the entire debate. They didn't shake hands to start, and it started right off in a battle between them. But it was a different tone for the remaining hour, focused more on policy, and I think many people would expect it. Did Hillary Clinton really take her opportunities tonight? Did she really effectively end this campaign?
I don't think so. I think it ended up essentially being a tie. I think Hillary Clinton could have really hammered Trump on the impacts, the consequences of that tape. Really kind of, as a woman herself, the first woman who's ever stood on a stage like that, pointed out just how offensive that was to so many women. And it's penetrated in a huge, huge way.
And not just to women.
Public. Of course, not just to women, but she's in a unique position to make that case, is what I mean, and she didn't quite do that. She also didn't mention the several dozen Republicans who have abandoned him. She had one moment where she seemed a little bit rattled when he kept on interrupting her and said, you're just upset that, she said, Donald, you're just upset that a bunch of Republicans are leaving you. She could have taken that further. She could have done that more methodically. In the first debate, her strategy was to rattle him, was to exploit his temperament. She did not do that in this debate, but she did, I think, score points when we got to the policy section. She demonstrated a much stronger knowledge of issues like Syria and the Middle East than Trump was able to do.
That's not surprising, but let's break down some moments, because I think when we go through, we almost forget some of them. There was a moment tonight, Kevin, where Donald Trump admitted that he actually had not been in discussion with his own running mate, Governor Mike Pence, about their strategy on Syria, saying, I don't talk to him, and moreover, I disagree with his strategy on Syria. Does that surprise you? What are we likely to see about an already embattled VP candidate over the rest of the week?
Well, Pence World is silent tonight. We have not heard from Pence World. I've been reaching out to them repeatedly tonight. Their messaging coming out of this, they need to prove whether or not they are with Donald Trump or against Donald Trump. But clearly, that is a moment of division that this campaign is going to have to answer for. Now, on the flip side of that, I think that Trump had a really strong moment, particularly on the email server, because this was not a moment in the past that he was able to capitalize on cohesively before tonight. And to see him push back on her talking about Lincoln, the movie, I think was one of his arguably strongest debate moments that we've seen.
This may have been the first time we saw a presidential candidate throw his vice presidential nominee under the bus on live TV during a debate. I've never seen anything like that before.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that either.
Pence's way of dealing with this situation where he disagreed with Trump, and we know they disagree on a lot of things, was to kind of brush it off and to pretend Donald Trump didn't quite say the thing that he's on tape saying. Trump's way was to flatly refute it, and I think it will very much intrigue the Clinton campaign that the thing that he refuted Pence on was confronting Russia and their aggression, because they already have this argument that Trump is too close to Russia.
Quickly, I just want to make one point, because I think that to many people who watch this debate, candidly, the majority of people who watch this debate, the takeaway is this. These are our two options, and I think that is really going to be the broad takeaway from the tone, from the style, and from the messaging that both of these candidates, for very different reasons, put forward in that display that we just watched.
Well, let's get to brass tacks here. We're talking about a campaign where Donald Trump is, whether he can get over 40%, how high her unfavorables, how unlikable they both are. But when we look at this and we think, did anyone actually gain voters tonight? Did anyone watch that debate actually say, I'm shifting my opinion because of what was said? He played a lot to the base. She played a lot to the policy. I don't think she made enough of the women card as well either this evening towards sealing that deal. Did anyone actually change their mind?
I doubt it. I doubt this debate moved a whole lot of voters, but I think that tie goes to Hillary Clinton. She doesn't need to expand her appeal. She has the numbers. She just needs to keep them, and I don't think she lost any support tonight. She needs to keep them, and she needs to make sure they turn out. Donald Trump does need to expand his appeal. He's losing ground. He has been losing ground over the last couple of weeks, even before, since the first debate, even before this tape came out, which is probably not going to help with suburban women, with white college-educated women. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. So Trump needed to help himself. He needed to expand his appeal. He did not do that. He was on offense all night. He drove two messages home, which is that she's dishonest, that she's a liar. He said that over and over again, and that he's a change agent. And she's been in politics for 30 years, hasn't achieved these things that she wants to achieve. Now, inside the bubble, we know it's more complicated than that, but outside the bubble, I think that really resonates with people. So, we'll see what happens with that.
Kevin, Sahil, thanks so much for joining again. We've got to take another break, but we'll be back more from the Washington University debate, the second presidential debate, from the spin room after this break. Welcome back to Bloomberg Politics and Twitter's live coverage of the second presidential debate here from Washington University in St. Louis. I'm joined now by Boris Epshteyn, a senior advisor for the Trump campaign. Boris, break it down for us. How did your man do tonight?
Absolute home run. He knocked it out of the park. It was a great night, strong, resolute. At 100% won this debate, won the town hall, and he was great both on why he should be president and prosecuting the case against Hillary Clinton on her emails, on her failures, and on her whole history.
We've talked a lot tonight how many of us were surprised by sort of the impromptu press appearance with some of Bill Clinton's accusers. just moments, just less than 2 hours away from this debate tonight. Tell me some of the psychology of that. Was he trying to rattle Hillary Clinton? Was it trying to move on from the video? Tell us why you think you did that.
These are some of the women, just some of the women, whose lives were ruined by the Clinton machine, and specifically by Hillary Clinton. In the case of the accusers, she smeared them. Hillary Clinton shamed those women. In the case of the woman whose rapist Hillary Clinton defended, Hillary Clinton laughed at that poor woman who was raped when she was 12, in the case of Ms. Shelton. So here's Mr. Trump just giving voice to those women and working for those women, just like he will for all Americans once he's president.
Well, let's break down the facts on this. We had Friday night the release of a video which shows him using words that anyone would describe as vulgar, as demeaning,
which he's apologized for.
Completely unbefitting anyone would say about the President of the United States, let alone your boss at work. Did he actually do enough to separate himself from McCaskill? You say he apologized. I didn't really hear him apologizing that much tonight.
Of course.
I heard him say, I'm a different man, but I didn't hear him say, this is a different kind of rhetoric. He defended it as locker room banter.
He apologized.
Is it really locker room banter?
He apologized on Friday twice.
Do you think it's fair to characterize those contexts as locker room banter?
He apologized on Friday twice. He apologized today. Yeah, of course it's locker room banter. He was obviously joking around with Billy Bush on Access Hollywood, and it was a joking back and forth. But Mr. Trump has been very specific in that he apologized for that language. His wife said it was offensive, and that she's ready to move on. And this country needs to move on to issues that actually matter, to national security, to the economy, to foreign policy. Hillary Clinton has failed this country on Iran, on Syria, on Libya, Benghazi, on and on and on. She's failed on everything she's ever done. She could not be allowed to be president.
Well, let's talk about another extraordinary moment in tonight's debate, which is Donald Trump saying on camera that he actually didn't listen to his own vice presidential advisor about issues on the issue of security on Syria, and that he hadn't heard Mike Pence's comments on the issue, that he didn't know his strategy, and in fact, he disagreed. How is Mike Pence going to respond to that? What is going forward? Is that effectively describe their relationship?
What Governor Pence was talking about was the safe zones, which the Trump-Pence ticket is absolutely agreeing on. As far as the safe zones, those are necessary and have to be protected. The Trump-Pence ticket has also been very consistent that we need to defeat ISIS first. 80% of people killed by ISIS have been killed in the last 3 years. We need to defeat ISIS first, and then we have to deal with Assad.
What do you think do you think he's done enough to get beyond what we've seen, this mass exodus of senior Republicans, this mass call for him to actually leave the ticket, to have someone else stand in? Did he do enough to come back with a campaign that many people have said is dead in the water?
100%, not just with the establishment Republicans. He did amazing today with the voters. Don't forget, 14 million people voted for him in the primaries. Tons of millions support him now. Tonight was a great night for Mr. Trump. We'll move on from here to Las Vegas, where he'll do great in that debate, and then to winning on November 8th. He showed himself to be the man that I know, somebody who's determined, who loves this country, who is not a liar like Hillary Clinton, and who will work for all Americans once he's president.
Do you think he's going to be able to attract women voters? Did he do enough with women voters tonight, specifically women who are in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania? People are on the face who want a better future for their children, who want a better future for not only their little girls but their little boys, and who look at the kind of comments that we saw on Friday night and say, that's too much for me, that goes beyond the pale.
Listen, women, men, all Americans want this country to be protected, want Americans to work. And it's clear that Hillary Clinton in her 40 years in public service has failed at doing both the protection and making sure Americans work. Look at her policies. She wants to raise taxes. Donald Trump wants to cut taxes. That's what Americans care about, not locker room banter from 11 years ago. And that's why Donald Trump will be elected on November 8th.
Thanks, Boris, so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sure you'll be talking quite a lot tonight about the victory that was
tonight. It's going to be
tonight.
a fun night. We're very excited. Thanks.
We want to bring in now Senator Claire McCaskill coming in with Mr. Heilemann.
Thank you,
John
Megan
Heilemann.
Murphy. I'm back with Claire McCaskill, the senator from Missouri. Senator, what'd you think?
Well, there were a couple of moments that were shocking to me. I think maybe the most shocking was we were all pretty sure that Donald Trump is not listening to anybody. I'm pretty sure his advisors said not a good idea to go after Miss Universe at 3 in the morning and ask people to look up sex tapes. But I thought he might be listening to Mike Pence. His acknowledgement that he and Mike Pence had not even discussed an important foreign policy issue, and more importantly, that he would say, I haven't talked to him about it and I disagree with him. Right. There was a gasp in the room because it just shows this is not someone who is capable of putting together a team that he would listen to.
There are a lot of Republicans who I think the main question for them is would Donald Trump melt down tonight completely, and would we have a complete conflagration tomorrow. Do you have a sense that Trump has survived this debate? Do you feel as though that he's done enough that he will still be the person Hillary Clinton's running against a week from now?
Well, I think he's definitely going to be the person that Hillary Clinton's running against. And, you know, the expectations were so low for Donald Trump, especially on top of the weekend he just had. I mean, he's got an awful lot of Republicans abandoning him. I'm not sure he stopped that tonight with the stunt he pulled before the debate began. I think the stunt was really bad.
And there we have the picture you're seeing on screen right now. You're seeing the Clintons getting ready to make their departure from the debate site. You can see the back of Bill Clinton there as he's about to jump in that car and exit the debate site. Senator, my other question for you is whether you had a sense, and I think there are a lot of Republicans who are very critical of Donald Trump, that he had a difficult time in the first 30 minutes or so of the debate, but after that seemed to exhibit at least a greater degree of preparation for this debate than he did the previous debate. Did you sense that? I mean, he seemed to have done some degree of research. We heard references to Jonathan Gruber. We heard references to Sidney Blumenthal. There were a variety of different places where you could get a sense that maybe he'd been studying. Did you have that sense tonight?
Well, once again, very low expectations, very low bar. I will admit he said the same phrase over and over and over again, but he did throw in a few research points. But several times he failed, too.
Right.
I mean, he didn't understand Chinese steel. Clearly, she had a better grasp of energy policy than he did. And also foreign policy, I think he showed some real weaknesses. Did
you think there like yet another, I think, widespread perception was that Senator Clinton was on defense for a decent chunk of the night in the middle of the debate? Did you feel like she held up relatively well at that point when she was taking tough questions both from the audience and from the moderators and from Trump?
I think she did. I think she held up very well. I think there really was a contrast. I mean, I think people forget that Donald Trump, we've gotten used to Donald Trump just saying the same things over again. I'm great, I'm wonderful, let's get along with Putin, I'll defeat ISIS, it's going to be great, it's going to be wonderful. I think people don't realize how little substance there really is. We've kind of gotten like inured to it, and it's like we don't realize he still doesn't say much, and he still didn't say much tonight.
What do you think we're going to be talking about tomorrow from this debate? We know these debates are about moments. You've been in a fair number of debates yourself. Usually the next day we look up, there are 2 or 3 things that we talk about and chew over for the next 24 to 48 hours. What are we going to be doing that about in the aftermath of this debate?
I think there'll be a fair amount of talk about the defiant, desperate, tacky attempt at a stunt before the debate, and parading the women in there in the front row, trying to somehow unsettle Hillary Clinton. I think people will be talking about that. I don't think that helps Donald Trump. I don't think that helps him with Republicans, by the way, that are really cautious about having anything to do with this guy now. And I think also it was a really the hate in the heart, I thought, was really tough and offensive, and then the whole thing that he hadn't even talked to Mike Pence and they disagree.
You're from a purple state that a couple months ago people talked about Missouri maybe being in play in this race. Is there a chance you think Missouri will be in play?
Missouri is in play.
Missouri's in play at the presidential level. Claire McCaskill promises that's the case.
It's the case.
All right, thank you, Claire McCaskill, very much. Thanks for being here.
We're going to cut to Mark Halperin right now, if we can get him in the spin room. He's out there trying to get some debates. I think we're still going to try and catch him to see what guests he's got. So what do you think about, John, in terms of what the senator was just saying? Do you think that Hillary did enough tonight? Particularly, I was surprised that she didn't really ram home on women and picking up as much on the video and her connection with female voters as I would have expected.
Yeah, I thought that Hillary Clinton was not at her best tonight, but for part of the reasons that Claire McCaskill suggested, and for some of these moments, I mean, again, they are like purely theatrical. People are still focused on Donald Trump sniffling, right? I mean, I thought it was even worse tonight than it was in the first debate. I think the notion of Trump basically trying to claim that he was going to throw his opponent in jail if he became president of the United States was a pretty dramatic moment. But I believe we have Mark now elsewhere in the spin room. Mark Halperin out there. Come in, partner.
You're telling the truth. You don't have any trouble talking.
So it didn't feel upsetting to, as you said, this was the first time you've seen him in person other than on TV.
That's upsetting. It doesn't upset me to see her. It disgusts me. But to see him, oh yeah, and I just saw him down the way. But
What was that like?
He's such a vile person.
Who contacted you to come tonight?
Huh?
Who contacted you to come tonight?
I don't know who it was.
Was it long planning to get you out here to St. Louis?
I had already started home from my Breitbart interview, and I think it was Breitbart that said the invitation had been extended, and I gladly accepted.
Would you do other appearances?
Thank you.
I want you to stand up right now. Stay with Mark. Stay with Mark. Go. Talk to camera. Talk to camera.
Kind of an extraordinary moment here in the spin room to have someone who is coming here to accuse a former president of the United States of sexual assault, which he's done in the past, but to come here and do this as part of the Republican nominee's campaign. It's extraordinary. It's emotional for anybody watching this to see the kind of accusations being made, and she echoed what Donald Trump has said, which is she's making an accusation about a physical act versus Donald Trump's words. It's quite something, and we're going to hope to see Mr. Trump in this spin room here, but there's a lot of emotion and intensity here, not the normal fare that you get in the spin room. So let me go back to you.
Well, it's going to be hard. All right. That was Mark Halperin in the spin room talking to Juanita Broddick.
Yeah.
Megan, you give me a sense of what you thought in terms of, we've all talked about the key demographic in this election now, college-educated, suburban, Republican-leaning women turned off in various ways by Donald Trump throughout the campaign. Do you think Trump did anything tonight to help with that problem?
I don't think he did anything to help with that problem. I don't think anything tonight to really separate himself, frankly, from the comments we saw on Friday. What I do think he was very effective at is what you were talking about earlier. He was more prepared tonight.
Yeah.
He had positions on things like Obamacare. He actually had the beginnings of a foreign policy in terms of Syria, although he wasn't pushed as hard. He went quite, he was effectively able to talk about taxes this evening. He talked about, stuff that was a more policy-centric debate for that middle hour than I think a lot of people expected. I don't think there was nothing in that debate on either side, I think, that really would have swung independent voters and said, I really want to move to that candidate. But it was not the car crash that people expected, I think, tonight, and he will be able to move on tomorrow.
Right. I will say the one question mark that looms still is the question of Mike Pence.
Couldn't agree more.
We thought tonight that if Trump's performance was bad enough, the question was, would Mike Pence stick with Donald Trump if his performance was terrible? By many lights in the Republican Party, Trump's performance was poor, but not disastrous. On the other hand, he threw Mike Pence under the bus tonight.
Completely.
And so there is some reporting coming out of Pence's camp that his people are apoplectic and furious and enraged by the way Trump treated Pence tonight on stage, given that Trump, although Pence was not fully supportive of Trump over the weekend, Pence has sort of stuck with Trump. So the question now becomes, even if Trump manages to survive this debate, what is the cost in terms of his running mate, and what does Mike Pence do tomorrow when he wakes up having thought about the way this debate went and the way in which he was treated by Donald Trump in front of 60, 70, 80 million people?
We'll see the viewer. I think your Pence watch is certainly in hyperdrive right now, and just to remind viewers, the moment that we're referring to is when Donald Trump basically said, in an incredibly dismissive way, I don't even talk to Mike Pence, and they were talking about Syria specifically, and I disagree with what he said as the policy. So that was quite a moment, I think, and we'll have to watch whether or not he can actually move forward. He already has had cut to his sort of moral center this issue about the video and how he can move forward just with his own family and his own constituency.
We saw the dismissal of Pence as a running mate, and we also saw Trump essentially taking a position on Syria that's totally at odds with the position that Pence put forward in the vice presidential debate. The extraordinary spectacle of Donald Trump basically siding with Bashar al-Assad tonight on stage, which is another thing that I think when we come down to substance in this debate, we'll get a lot of discussion tomorrow, because it is obviously a huge foreign policy issue and an issue on which Trump, again, contradicted his running mate and said things that will be provocative to not just a lot of Democrats, but a lot of Republican foreign policy people.
And we should say to people that the top tweeted moment out of the debate was actually the exchange on Syria, which I think will surprise a lot of people, and it was not about locker room banner. Welcome back, Mark Halperin.
Nice to be back and out of the scrum.
The top tweeted moment in a debate that was the most tweeted debate in history. And we all had put so much emphasis on the first debate and how big the audience would be, but all the buildup over this weekend, apparently this debate, at least among Twitter followers, this was a bigger debate in some respects than the first debate.
Yeah. I've talked about 4 Trump people between going to the spin room and coming back in. Their attitude is they won the debate. They're going to say that, but I think they're right. They do live to fight another day. They do put the brakes on what could have been effectively the end of the campaign.
But I will ask you this question. We thought that Trump's performance might affect Mike Pence tomorrow. His performance was not horrible, but he did throw Mike Pence under the bus tonight. So what does Mike Pence do tomorrow?
He probably has a heart-to-heart with Donald Trump about that moment, but I don't think that's enough. He's put up with a lot more than just a barb at the debate, I would say.
All right, so Megan Murphy, Mark Halperin, and me, John Heilemann, we want to say thanks to our friends at Twitter, our exclusive partners for this Bloomberg Politics debate night coverage, both pregame and this postgame segment. Be sure to tune into our show, With All Due Respect, live at 5 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg TV tomorrow. And until then, I say to you, from Megan, from Mark, from me, sayonara.